What is up? Welcome to the NFL Fantasy Football Draft Special presented by Verizon. I'm Marcus Grant. He is Adam Rank. We are here to break down the first round of the NFL Draft from a fantasy standpoint, obviously. But Rank, I have to ask, are you still floating above the clouds after the Bears draft pick last night?
You can hear the conversations that we've been having before the show where I've been filibustering for 20 minutes asking our producer if I can wear one of the assortment of Chicago Bear hats that are here behind me, but they're try to be a little bit more professional. Even though Kyle Brandt was wearing the jersey, I didn't even get the jersey. What's going on? But the thing is I'm thrilled, and I think we'll talk more about Justin Fields, but I think that it's a weird feeling being a Bears fan and actually being excited about what happened in night one of the NFL draft.
Well, especially with the turmoil going on in Green Bay around their quarterback.
I forgot about that.
It's all pretty good right now in Chicago. And yes, we will talk about Justin Fields in just a moment. But let's start at the top of the draft. To no one's surprise, the Jaguars began it with Trevor Lawrence as the number one overall pick. Zach Wilson goes number 2 to the New York Jets. Trey Lance, maybe a little bit of a surprise at number 3 to the 49ers. The aforementioned Justin Fields goes 11th to the Bears, and then Mac Jones falls to number 15 to the New England Patriots. But let's go back to Trevor Lawrence, because all the talk about him coming into this draft was that he was the greatest quarterback prospect since fill in the blank. Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, whoever you want. That is who Trevor Lawrence was sort of being comped with in terms of what his potential ceiling is. Fantasy-wise, though, what is his fantasy value? Is he a Justin Herbert type? What are you looking at for Trevor Lawrence this year?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the comp that everybody throws to, is what happened last season with Justin Herbert, who stepped into a role that we didn't expect to see him in so quickly. And I think that, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence. This is a player that we've seen play every Saturday for the last 3 years. He's been in the college football playoffs. He does not lose regular season games. I think it was Tom Pelissero who pointed out the dude has not lost a regular season game ever, high school, college, and unless the Jags go 17-0, which you never know, it could happen. That would be the first. And so I'm looking at him, and of course we always talk about this, how deep the quarterback position is. But with a 17-game schedule this season, remember that, everybody, there, to me, feels like there's going to be a bigger need for a quarterback this season. And Trevor Lawrence is definitely a guy that I want to pick after I draft my first signal caller.
I think that's the thing, is that I'm right now sort of having him pegged just outside the top 12. I do like his weapons. I like DJ Chark. I've been on record multiple times saying how much I love Laviska Shenault. And I think the difference between Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert is that nobody was drafting Herbert, outside of dynasty leagues. And redraft leagues, nobody was drafting him because we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know when or if he was going to start last year. Obviously, things kind of worked out in his favor, and he was great. The difference is Trevor Lawrence is going to get drafted. He's probably going to be that guy that comes off the board, I would guess, 9th round, probably somewhere around there in a lot of drafts. So there are expectations for him, and I'm with you. I think if I'm a person who maybe drafts a quarterback a little bit earlier, if I'm going after somebody in, say, the 5th or 6th round, and if I can get Trevor Lawrence as my second QB in the 10th round, I would love that. I don't know that I am comfortable with him right now as an every week starter. I think I want some sort of buffer for him on my roster.
Yeah.
But I do think he's going to be great.
No, I agree. But I also think, too, because I notice in a lot of the mock drafts that I've been doing that one of the players that I've been targeting, actually two guys. It's Matthew Stafford and it's, Joe Burrow. It depends on which receiver I get, and I always want to stack. If I get Cooper Kupp, I go with Stafford. I was drafting T. Higgins. I don't know if I'll be doing that anymore. But I think if you have one of those two quarterbacks, I think that Trevor Lawrence makes a lot of sense there, too, because in case something happens, they fall off a little bit, or just, it's just going to be a weird season seeing 17 games. So I think that he could end up being a pretty nice little complementary piece that eventually you're going to end up starting at some point.
By the way, we will get to the T. Higgins conundrum a little bit later on in this show. But obviously there were 4 other quarterbacks that went off the board in the first round. Looking at all the guys not named Trevor Lawrence, which one do you think has the highest ceiling in 2021?
Is that a serious question to me?
Are you going
to make me go through the song and dance?
What's on the rundown? That's all I'm doing.
Pretend it's not Justin Fields. I'm not convinced that Justin Fields is not going to end up as the top rookie quarterback this season. And to me, I think the comparison that I'm going to make immediately is to Deshaun Watson and what he was able to do during his rookie season, because the situation seems all too familiar. Like the 49ers, for instance, took the high upside guy who's athletic. We never saw him play college football. And then you're like, I hope he's good. Justin Fields is a lot like Deshaun Watson in that we've seen him play a lot and see him play at a high level. Oh, and by the way, he went out there and smoked Trevor Lawrence in the college football playoff this season. 6 touchdowns. One of them immediately after he was cheap-shotted by some Clemson Tiger who now I retroactively do not like. Like now you're going after my quarterback. So I think that Justin Fields has a real opportunity to get on the gridiron this season, to be the Bears starting quarterback, possibly as soon as week 1. And I think that he's got a lot of upside. He's athletic. He's not necessarily a guy who's going to go out there and run for a ton of yards. He's not going to go out there and put up 100 rushing yards, but he can get you 20 or 30. He really likes to extend the pocket and just make throws like that. So I really love Justin Fields. Sorry that I'm talking too much about it. Listen, it's a weird experience for me. That's kind of like when I finally bought a new car for the first time. Like after driving like beater vehicles for years, like garbage things that you were like embarrassed to show up into a parking lot. Like you would park 6 blocks away so your friends wouldn't see your car. But once you get a new car, you want everybody to see it. And that's what it's like with Justin Fields right now. I just want to talk about it.
I mean, it's like that feeling of not having to plug a special adapter into the tape deck so you can listen to the music that's on your phone. Like, I completely understand that. No, I agree. I think Justin Fields is the guy with the biggest upside there. I think the Trey Lance thing, as you sort of alluded to, is a little bit of wish casting. People look at his skill set and what he can do, but I think you look at the level of competition he was playing in college and the fact that he played just 1 game last year, and there are some legitimate questions there. Justin Fields can do, I think, a lot of the same things Trevor Lawrence can do, maybe not quite as well. At least maybe he didn't do them as well in college, but I still think he is very, very good, and I think he's the guy that is going to do a lot of great things. So I'm big on the Justin Fields train. I think he's going to be a guy that I would not mind taking a shot at in redraft leagues late. I think certainly in dynasty leagues, you're going to see him off the board in the first round of rookie drafts there. So I think there's a lot of upside. The other part of this that doesn't have any direct maybe impact on Justin Fields is that Allen Robinson finally has the quarterback we have been wishing for him to have for so many years. I mean, you know, we were really all set to say that Andy Dalton was going to be the best quarterback he's ever played with. Now I think we can upgrade that to Justin Fields. And by the way, what will you remember most about the Andy Dalton era in Chicago?
Well, it was a fun month. And, you know, again, trying to convince yourself, like it was, you know, I don't want this to become a situation where we're making fun of Andy Dalton, because I do feel for him. He's a nice person. I've met him before. He's delightful. He's got a great dry sense of humor. So I'm like, I'm sorry that you're caught up in the wash, but yeah, bro, like it's like if you were like going to the prom with one of your friends and you're like, hey, let's go to the prom. But then like the hottest chick in school suddenly became available and wanted to go with you, and you would have to tell your friend, like, I'm sorry. I know this sounds like a very special episode of Saved by the Bell or something, and I'm going to come off like the creep. I don't care, because I've been waiting for so long that I think that I should be allowed to just be like, we're going to roll with Justin Fields here.
I really feel like Freddie Prinze Jr. and Dak Shepard started a movie like that at some point.
Oh my gosh. No, it was the other guy. It was Freddie Prinze and maybe it was Lillard. Dak Shepard.
Matthew Lillard, that's the
right.
guy.
That's it.
There
Matthew Lillard.
All right. There were some non-quarterbacks drafted. Kyle Pitts, the first pass catcher. I know, shocking, right? Kyle Pitts was the first pass catcher off the board. He went number 4 overall to the Atlanta Falcons. And when everybody talked about this guy during draft season, the word unicorn kept coming up over and over again because of his just ridiculous skill set and the fact that he's like a wide receiver with tight end next to his name. So now the question for me to you is, can he be a top 7 fantasy tight end in 2021?
Well, I think that before the show, we talked about this, and you have to understand the low bar there is to be the number 7 tight end. Like, it's really easy to get into that club. Like, there's like the quarterback, like to be a top 7 quarterback, like you've actually got to pay up for that. You got to get bottle service and everything like that. For tight end, it's like, just show up. You got a coupon, bring your friend. Like, we're letting everybody in. So I do believe that he does profile that way. And to me, though, Marcus, you can tell me how you're feeling about this. I just look at the way that they're constructed right now. I think that, with Calvin Ridley and Julio, if both of those players remain on the roster and they still have Hayden Hurst, like, I think it's going to be tough. I think he's going to make some spectacular plays and he's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be tough for him to step in immediately and be a top 7 guy.
I mean, I understand that concern with the targets they have there. Now, there are those rumors that maybe Julio Jones gets traded, and that certainly changes the situation. I think the upside with Pitts in the offense is the fact that I expect the Falcons defense still to give up some points. I think there's going to be a situation where they've got to throw the football a lot. And as you said, it doesn't take a ton to be the tight end 7. Last year, that was Mike Gesicki, and he had maybe 3.5 good games last year, and that kind of got him to the number 7 spot. I'm looking at if Kyle Pitts can get you 55 to 60 catches, about 750 yards, 5 or 6 touchdowns, that could be good enough to get him into the top 7. So I think
when you put the numbers like that, then I feel stupid for being like, obviously he could reach that. Even if both those guys stay. Like, when you throw out Gesicki, I just didn't want to steal your point. I'm sorry. So I'm like, now I'm reverse engineering this. I'm like, I think you're right. Like, of course. Like, it is crazy. And it's always, and for tight ends, unless you're Travis Kelce or George Kittle when he's completely healthy, even Darren Waller last year had like these games where he did not put up huge point totals, but still ended up as the tight end too. And I think that's going to be the problem with these tight ends. And what we're looking for is that Kyle Pitts will end up having 4 games where he scores like 6 touchdowns and has a ton of yards. He might be irrelevant the rest of the time, but then he'll end up as the tight end 7. So yeah. Okay, Marcus, you convinced me. That's it. That's how easy it was for me to change my mind.
All I'm going to say is, if you play in a keeper league, enjoy the discount you get on Kyle Pitts this year, because I have a feeling next year we'll be drafting him with the Kittles and Wallers and those guys probably in the first couple of rounds. So, enjoy your 7th round discount in 2020, because it's the last time it's probably going to happen. All right, it was hands across America with 5 wide receivers drafted on Thursday night. Now, which ones could catch on with fantasy managers? We're talking about our favorite rookie wideouts for 2021 after the break. Welcome back to the NFL Fantasy Football Draft Special presented by Verizon. This is a look at the wide receivers that were drafted in the first round. Jamar Chase reunited with his old college teammate Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Jaylen Waddle reconnects with his college teammate Tua Tagovailoa down in Miami. DeVonta Smith, well, another reunion there as he connects with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. Kadarius Toney, I don't think he and Daniel Jones have any prior history, nor do Rashad Bateman and Lamar Jackson, but those are the 5 wide receivers that came off the board. Time now for Snap Grades presented by Verizon. And as I mentioned, the Bengals took LSU receiver Jamar Chase with the number 5 overall pick on Thursday night. So we're going to put a grade on it. So Adam Rank, from a fantasy perspective, how would you grade this move with Jamar Chase going to Cincinnati?
After some firm contemplation, I'm going to give it an A. I actually really like this move. I for a second, I didn't like it fantasy-wise. And if you were watching our Instagram reels or whatever, and I was like, oh, great, you're all wide receiver 3s. I was a little salty at first. But after I reflected, I really do believe that this is a very similar situation to what happened last year with Justin Jefferson. And I guess that would make T. Higgins the Adam Thielen in this situation. I know Tyler Boyd is a fine receiver as well. But I really do believe that there's a number of factors here that could help this work out in his favor. Now, number one, he's a great receiver. Like, he is going to be a number 1 receiver who has worked with this quarterback extensively. They know each other. They've played together. I don't think that you can underestimate that. I think this Bengals team is going to still need some help defensively, and they're going to be in a lot of situations where they're going to have to throw the football, which could lend itself to a lot of fantasy points. And I know, and I'm sitting here, and I know a lot of people were dragging this pick, like, oh, who's blocking for Joe Burrow? And we're sitting here on Friday afternoon, and I've got news for a lot of you out there. The draft's still going on. And as a matter of fact, this might be breaking news for a lot of you, but the Bengals have a pick. And believe it or not, there are still some tackles available. And the tackle, if they get Tevin Jenkins, let's say, for instance, that Tevin Jenkins is – a big of a risk is Penei Sewell, and it doesn't matter. So they're gonna address it. So don't worry, Joe Burrow will be fine. But you gave him an elite level receiver, and I think it's going to work out fantastic. And you know what? I'm overdrafting Jamar Chase, and I'm already preparing myself for it.
So I'm giving this a B+ with the caveat that I reserve the right to upgrade it when and if the Bengals do draft a tackle, because that was sort of my big
like
fears
2
were.
hours.
That's why I said I reserve the right to change my mind. I'm not putting this in stone. This is more written in pencil than pen right now. There is. You talked about earlier Kyle Pitts in sort of a crowded pass catcher group there in Atlanta, and I think there's a little bit of that in Cincinnati with Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins there. I know all the folks who were big on T. Higgins, like our pal Michael F. Florio, they have a little bit of the sads now because this is certainly going to take some food off of his plate. And I do worry a little bit about making sure Joe Burrow is protected after we saw him get hurt and injured midway through the year last year. But if the Bengals go out, add some protection along that front line, and the fact that, as you mentioned, that defense is still going to have some issues, they're going to give up some points. I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati throws the ball about 600 times this year. Then that means there are going to be targets available for Jamar Chase. If it makes you feel any better, though, Rank, I do think he's a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside, just because I don't know that there's going to be quite as much production. There'll be a lot of attempts, a lot of pass attempts. I don't know if it'll be quite as productive as we want it to be, but I still would have no problems with making – I don't know if I have a problem with making Jamar Chase the first Bengal wide receiver off the board. I don't think that's a completely ridiculous statement.
I think that's a given. I was mock drafting T. Higgins all over the place. And again, I was going for stacks with Joe Burrow and T. Higgins because I just was like, oh, it'll be a fun little combination, figuring that they were going to go with a tackle right there. But now with Jamar Chase, I'll probably be in the same mode again where I'm going to probably try to stack these two. You know, they come in from an offensive system that was engineered by Joe Brady, who obviously was in Carolina last year, but he did play with him. So I think that this guy knows all the routes. He knows what to do on the football field. I just can't wait till, no disrespect to Zach Taylor, I would fire him today and just hire Joe Brady. You've come this far. Why are you stopping halfway? Like, is it against the rules? Like, can you do that? Like, I'm sorry, Zach, I don't want you to lose your gig. But now I want Joe Brady to be the coach of the Cincinnati Bengals.
if we're going all in, do we get Ed Orgeron to be like a consultant or something like that? Can we do that too as well?
Yeah, he can run the defense. Let's let Joe Brady run the offense. This is a different show all of a sudden. Sorry.
This is a very different show. That was Snap Grades presented by Verizon. All right, some of the other wide receivers that went off the board, Jaylen Waddle goes 6th overall to the Miami Dolphins. I mentioned that he reunites with his old college teammate Tua Tagovailoa. What are you expecting from Waddle in 21?
I really liked it. First of all, I love when you're just so stunned. Like, even after all these years, I can still leave you speechless. Like, what is Frank talking about? It's one of my favorite things. But I love Jaylen Waddle. I again, like, these Alabama receivers have just been coming out and absolutely crushing it. Look at the swag right there. I love that coat. I obviously could never pull off something like that. I think you could. Like, you would look good in that. Me, not so much. But I just thought that Jamar Chase was so good. Like, it's hard to be like, this was my favorite receiver coming off the board. But I think Waddle in any other year would probably be my favorite receiver. I think he brings a lot to the table. I think that Miami has done a really nice job of getting some talent there. Obviously, bringing in Will Fuller this season. They have DeVonta Parker. None of those guys can do kind of what Jaylen Waddle does. Like, he gets so open right there. It is just ridiculous. Mac Jones can't overthrow him here. There you go. He goes up and gets the football. I love everything that he does, and I think that this Miami team is on the cusp of being really good. And you think about it last year. We were talking about Myles Gaskin before the show. Like, they were finding some random people to be very good in this offense. Now you're going out and getting bona fide superstars. I think Waddle can be really huge for this offense.
The thing about Jaylen Waddle when you watch him is obviously the first thing you notice is just the blazing speed and the fact that opposing defensive backs would give him so much cushion off the line of scrimmage. And I think one of the things that the Dolphins have tried to do this offseason is add speed to this wide receiver group. They signed Will Fuller. Now they draft Jaylen Waddle. And initially, when they went out and got Will Fuller, my fear was, well, why are they getting a guy who's a deep threat with a quarterback who didn't really throw the ball deep last year? And I had to remind myself that Tua was coming off a major hip injury, kind of starting midway through the year. And he wasn't terrible. He just, I think in light of what Justin Herbert did, everybody was disappointed. But give him a year to get even healthier. And if he goes back to being that guy that we saw at Bama that would push the ball down the field, suddenly I love what they have in this wide receiver group. My other question, though, becomes who's sort of the odd man out here? And I feel like it's probably going to be Preston Williams, right? I mean, you've got DeVonta Parker.
Well, no, I don't know, man.
I mean, you got
DeVonta Parker, Will Fuller. I'm tired of DeVonta Parker. No disrespect to him. He's a good player. Like, he's on the NFL level. He's good. But it's like, no. I think Preston Williams, jeez, I do this every time. I think that he's the best I think he's the most consistent option. But I think Waddle and Will Fuller are going to be those pop play guys. And I know that Will Fuller is going to have his 6 games. He'll play a lot. He does play more than people give him credit for. But he has 6 incredible games every year. He'll still have that. But I think Waddle will end up being more consistent.
Well, the guy who was arguably the number 1 wide receiver on the board was DeVonta Smith. And after he got drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, he put out a tweet trying to already get in good with some of the locals. He asked for what is the best cheesesteak spot in Philly. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if you have a particular spot that when you go to the city of brotherly love that you have.
You know what? I don't have a spot in Philly, but I do know that if you're ever in Long Beach, where I live, Philly Grill. It's a place that used to be frequented by Kobe Bryant. Like, his photos up. Yeah, he's obviously a Philly guy. So that's my interpretation of what Philly cheesesteak should be. So it's a Californian who is via Chicago trying to figure, like, if you want me to talk about Portillo's or something like that, I can do it. By the way, that's a sponsored thing. I probably shouldn't have said that. I'm throwing out all the sponsors. I don't care. But what about DeVonta Smith? Again,
what about DeVonta Smith?
I love the Eagles going after it one more time. It's kind of like, the Bears, they've been burned by trading up for a quarterback. They had no hesitation doing it again. Last year, the Eagles passed up on Justin Jefferson, laughing about not getting Justin Jefferson and going with Jalen Reagor. Now they're going after it again and trying to surround Jalen Hurts with as much available talent as possible. And I think that this guy really fits their offense. And I think that if you're an Eagles fan and you remember Deshaun Jackson, this is going to be a pretty good comp for you. You're going to be like, oh, I love players like this and what they can do and when they can get down the field. And so this is probably the best way for the Eagles to approach that. I think that they've really started to put together a nice little team that a lot of fantasy enthusiasts are going to start targeting, because even if Rieger does come out and can eventually reach the levels that they were hoping he could get there, that's not going to take away from DeVonta Smith. So I think, again, this is another player that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I think that we've come to the point that we can be comfortable with rookies, especially at the wide receiver position, and I think Smith is going to be excellent.
I think we can be comfortable with rookies at wide receiver, and I think especially in a situation like Philly, where they really are hurting for wide receivers. I mean, at one point last year, they were sort of trying to survive offensively with Travis Fulgham and Greg Ward. I mean, I'm sure they are very fine guys, and they played well at times, but I just don't think you can really run your offense that way. The word I keep using with DeVonta Smith is that he is a technician when it comes to running routes, and that was sort of the reason I didn't really stress out about his size. Everybody worries about him being so small and being so light. I don't worry about that, because the way he runs routes, the way he gets off the line, it's hard to get a hand on him. He's going to find ways to get open, and he's got a quarterback that hopefully can deliver him the football. So I do love what his upside can be. And if, as you mentioned, if Jalen Reagor becomes something close to the guy Philly hopes they can be, then that's another target. That's one more guy to take coverage away and help him get open a little bit more. So I'm with you. I'm a big fan of DeVonta Smith, and I think Philadelphia ends up being a really, really good situation for him. Look, it's a new, interesting offense, right? Miles Sanders is there.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts expected to be the starting quarterback. Now with Reagor and Smith there, there is a lot to like. There's a lot that's intriguing to me. With this
I
offense.
love it. I love what they're doing in Philadelphia. I know they're in rebuild mode and everything like that, but the offense is something that you can trust, at least for fantasy.
Absolutely. A couple other names worth mentioning. Kadarius Toney taken 20th overall by the New York Giants. Rashad Bateman goes number 27 to the Baltimore Ravens. Of those two guys, which one interests you more in redraft leagues this year?
Yeah, I was trying to make the case for Toney, but obviously, I don't know. I like Bateman a lot. I thought that was a great player, and as somebody who's rooting for the Chicago Bears, I was a little concerned that perhaps the Packers would make a play for him. But I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. It's the Packers. They don't draft wide receivers in the first round, so what do I care? This is just another a great receiver who's going into a pretty good situation. I am a little bit, because when I was trying to make the case for Toney, I'm like, well, Hollywood Brown is there, but again, I think that Bateman can coexist with Hollywood Brown, and I think that right now they just need to put as many available pass catchers around Lamar and let him go to work and show what he can do as a passer. I think that he gets dragged way too much for not being an accurate passer and everything like that. Bringing in a player like Bateman should help put those haters in their place, I guess is the way to put it. I don't know. I know some of them work for us, so I don't want to be too mean to him, but I think that Bateman's the guy who could really step up this season.
I like Bateman as well. I think he's going to be that big body outside receiver that Marquise Brown just can't be. And I do like the fact that they started using Hollywood on things other than just vertical routes last year. So if these two can sort of diversify, I think that helps. I like Toney's skill set. I just think that there's a lot of guys right now there in New York after they added, Kenny Golladay and John Ross to go along with Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, Saquon's back. I just don't see the opportunity being there for Kadarius Toney in year one. That's going to be a tough ball, I think, for him right away down there.
I feel like DeVonta Smith could have been fine there, but once they had to not settle for Toney. But Toney's a good player, but he's not a fantasy superstar like those other guys.
It felt like a panic move by the Giants, too, after trading back and still going after a wide receiver. All right. Najee Harris went from Bama to the Berg. But could Steel City's new back be a league winner in 2021? We break it down next on the NFL Fantasy Football Draft Special presented by Verizon. Back on the NFL Fantasy Draft Special presented by Verizon. Let's talk about a couple of running backs. There were two that went off the board in the first round, which honestly is probably one more than I had anticipated. Najee Harris was the first one. That's not a surprise. He goes number 24 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I feel like just about every single mock I read had him going number 24 to the Steelers. This is maybe the least surprising thing that happened all night. But it's a potential workhorse back in a good situation, at least with a lot of opportunity. Can he be a top 15 guy in 2021?
I really do believe so. And this is going to be another player. I know last year we were going all in on some of the rookies and everything, but I think that this is a situation where it really warrants it because Pittsburgh has shown throughout their entirety that they like to rely on running backs to really step up right from the get-go. And we've seen a number of them over the years come in and do it. And it's no surprise because, again, you get the fifth-year option on him and everything like that. So this is a really good move for them. And the one player that when you watch him play, and perhaps it's because he's wearing the number 22, he's really Matt Forte-like. And he's got the moves like him. He can catch the football as well. And so when you mix all that in, and you mix it in with noodle-armed Ben Roethlisberger, I think that he could also add into the passing game as well and end up being one of the top fantasy running backs this season. So this should definitely be the first rookie running back off the boards. I know we've got one tonight that we're waiting for. We're going to see where DeVonta goes, but I really think that it's going to end up being Harris as the first running back, the first rookie running back off the board, as he should be.
I think so. I think so. I mean, there's talk that in Dynasty rookie drafts, he could be the first overall pick. I don't know, you might be of the Kyle Pitts persuasion or the Trevor Lawrence, but Najee Harris is going to be up there. There's plenty of opportunity there, and I think he easily beats out Benny Snell for the majority of touches. I don't think that's really a question mark at all. And you mentioned the pass catching. I know people have sort of varied on how they feel about him as a pass catcher. I think it's a thing he can do. I think it's just a thing he wasn't asked to do a lot at Alabama.
Yeah,
I'm not worried about that right there. I do think he is a top 15 guy. The only question for me is how early he goes in drafts. I saw some excitement last night saying maybe he's into the first round. I don't think I take him quite that early. I think he's still more of a mid-second round guy for me, but he is still a guy who I like with some RB1 upside. I think he can really be that guy. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets about 250 touches this year.
Are you old enough to remember when Clyde Edwards-Helaire was going in the first round last year? Like, I have a friend, Doug DePaulo, who took Clyde Edwards-Helaire in front of Derrick Henry in a half-point PPR league, which I will never let him live down to this day. And I think that it's going to Harris is definitely going in the first round. Like, let's all just agree to this, because it just takes one person out of your 10 or 12 person league to be like, I'm doing it. And then it happens. And I don't know. I haven't been that person lately, even though I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire last season. But I do believe he's going in the first round. Like, especially once the frenzy starts, like, we know exactly how this business works. He's going in the first round. Let's just accept it. Are you going to be the person who does it? Me personally, no. And Marcus, I assume you're not doing it either.
Probably not, no. Which, by the way, to the person on Twitter who responded to my Najee Harris workhorse tweet with, "Hey, how did CEH work out last year?"
Oh my God!
I don't subscribe to philosophy of I'm avoiding a player because a different player on a different team didn't live up to expectations. That's just nonsensical.
Oh my gosh! How many times do you think I had to hear last night? Like, what about Kirk Herbstreit? How did he work out? You're like, what? What?
Oh, man. All right. Before we get out of here, Travis Etienne, he ends up being the second running back taken. He goes 24 overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which was a little bit of a surprise, and certainly for all the James Robinson truthers was a punch in the gut. So with Etienne, I mean, have you worked out what you think his production level can be this year?
I'm really upset with Toney. And you know what? I'm the guy who goes around. I never mess with Tony Khan and his booking decisions for AEW. I'm always a huge fan. I love how they've pushed Orange Cassidy and Darby Allin and all those guys. And I'm a huge fan of what's going on in Duval County, not only in football, but professional wrestling too. But this is one time, if I can have some real talk with you, like, come on, guys, what are you doing? Why are you taking James Robinson away from us? He was so fantastic during his rookie season. I was absolutely shocked that Travis Etienne went there in the first round. I thought perhaps they would go defense. They had some. They don't have a lot. It's weird for a team that's picking first overall. I don't necessarily believe that they have a lot of holes. But I did, as I sat there and reflected after my hysteria of my fantasy shares, my friend Steve Lemmy of Tacoma FD, him and I commiserating about how bad this is for fantasy. I think this is a good football move. I think that what Jacksonville is obviously doing is trying to put as many playmakers around Trevor Lawrence as possible to make him successful. I know the Packers don't like to do stuff like that, but at least Jacksonville is. And so I can appreciate that. And it's going to be fun. Like, it's going to be fun to see him. And he's playing with his college teammate. It's got to be a bummer for James Robinson. You're like, hey, I can do this. You're like, okay, well, the backup played for our coach in college, but I should be okay. Oh, you just drafted the quarterback's running back? Okay, thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. But it's going to be one of those situations. It's going to be fun to watch, not if you draft them in fantasy. And that's okay. Tony, you don't have to worry about me. It's fine. Just go out and win games.
I love Etienne's skill set. I feel like if it ends up just being a two-headed attack between Robinson and Etienne, then I feel a little bit better about that. If they really do want to work Carlos Hyde in there, I think it becomes a little bit more of a headache than I want to deal with in fantasy. I believed that James Robinson was going to have a lot more competition for touches. I thought last year was kind of a perfect storm of circumstances where you had some injuries, you had some COVID opt-outs, and that allowed him to be that true workhorse back. I didn't think it would happen again. I also didn't think the Jaguars would draft a guy that could potentially push him to be the starting running back on this team. But if we get to a point and it looks like it's just a two-headed attack, a two-headed rotation, then I feel okay with Etienne as possibly a flex option, especially because I think he'll be more of the pass-catching back in this offense. So you hear that, Urban Meyer?
I haven't checked
nice, but he can sit.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt with my dumb point. No, because I was just watching this highlight reel, and it just dawned on me. Like, I don't know if the Jags have a number 9 currently on their roster, and I want Etienne to wear number 9.
I'm down with that.
Sorry, that's dumb. I know.
Especially, but now that look, we know that Kyle Pitts, I think, is going to wear number 8. Trey Lance is going to be number 5. We've seen Leonard Fournette has switched back to 7. So I'd be okay with that. With Travis Etienne wearing 9, absolutely.
That'd be sick.
It would.
Then I will draft him. No,
you're gonna if he wears number 9, you'll draft him. I'm holding you to that, by the way. If he does come out with number 9. Hey, look, there is still more draft to come, as Adam Rank mentioned earlier, which means we will be back with you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, with another recap of rounds 2 and 3 from a fantasy perspective in the NFL draft. So be sure to check us out at NFL.com, the NFL app, and at YouTube, youtube.com/NFL Fantasy Football. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching the NFL Fantasy Football Draft Special presented by Verizon. Enjoy the draft. We'll see you tomorrow.